062, where you will be given the direct link. Also visit the Empower Works website, where you'll find all the other information and details about other programs that Empower Works runs, like Empower Men, Empower Women, Empower Youth, Leadership Summits, and the events that they host. We are live on the following Empower Works digital platform: YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and the hashtag that we've been using for these conversations is hashtag Empower Entrepreneurs. Since the COVID-19 crisis and subsequent listing of essential goods and services, the Competition Commission has had to adjust certain aspects of its regulations, particularly when it comes to price fixing. However, there are exceptions to this. Fighting the COVID-19 virus effectively requires collaboration. Looking forward to hear your address, Commissioner. Over to you, Mr. Tembinkosi Bonakele.
Thank you very much, Sishaba, and thank you and your team for organizing all of this. It's very good that we are able to have this conversation despite the fact that we cannot meet physically. I'm grateful for the platform because what I'm going to say today is quite important for entrepreneurs, especially. We have been trying to get the message out. I am in teleconferences with business all the time. I've had teleconferences with the CEOs of all the major retailers and pharmaceutical groups in the country. So I'm grateful that you were able to do a platform of this nature so that I'm able to reach an even much wider audience. Now, you've already foreshadowed the important issue, which is how does one enforce competition law in the context of COVID-19? I'm going to talk about that, and I'm also going to talk about what are the opportunities that are there for entrepreneurs, and how can they use competition law in such a way that it's, instead of it being seen as a hindrance, punishes business people. How do you see it as how do we project it as an enabler for business? So I'm hoping to talk about that as well. So the first thing is, with the declaration of the national disaster by the president, various ministers issued regulations as well as directives. And there were specific directives and regulations issued in terms of the Competition Act. And these related mainly with pricing, because as soon as there was an announcement that there was a national disaster coming, even before the lockdown was declared, was announced rather, we had consumers flocking into retail stores. And these were obviously the more affluent people who didn't have to wait for the end of the month before they could go and buy. And they didn't just buy for a month, they were stockpiling. And that had an immediate impact on the value chains. So as you know, supply and demand is quite important for markets. And when you have a situation like that, where you have an upsurge in demand, and there is no immediate response by other suppliers, it will tend to push up the prices. So we got that immediate shock. And of course, in some instances, there were even shortages of goods as people were stockpiling. And our immediate worry was that come end of the month, you would have people who are salaried getting paid, but also you will have people who earn social grants getting paid. And by the time they get paid, there would be no supplies. And so we worked very hard also to persuade the retailers to start restricting people and also to make sure that they themselves stock enough so that you don't have a problem where the pensioners, by the time the pensioners go and buy, the prices would be up, but also there would be a possibility of food and other items being unavailable. So a lot of work in this regard, I think, has been done, and a lot, I think, has also been achieved in the sense that we managed to get a commitment from many of these retailers around these matters. The matter that became difficult to control was that there are price increases that are imposed on us because we are importing. So that's inflation that you import, and there's very little you can do about that. And there are also product supply chains that were disrupted, and therefore that led to some price pressures. So if you think of products like rice, for example, Vietnam has banned the exports of rice. Thailand is still exporting, but who knows when they too would start imposing restrictions. So as soon as you have restrictions like that, that affects the supply chains and supply and demand, pushing up prices. We've had the prices of wheat in this past week. We've looked at them, they've increased by about 25%. That too is likely to play into the market over time. So we've managed, I think, to slow down what could have been a calamity in terms of price increases. And this doesn't mean that there would be no price increases at all, but at least I think we have managed, if you like, to make sure that the curve is not as steep immediately. There also was a noticeable abuse, and this is really what I want to spend a little bit of time talking about. There was a noticeable abuse where people increased prices significantly without themselves having experienced a similar increases. So sometimes there would be a small percentage increase, but the retailer would then increase their margins, taking advantage of them, of the situation. A lot of this was done by small independents. There were allegations against large ones, which we have followed up. We are still following up against shops like Spar. So Spar indicated to us that a lot of these price increases are imposed by their store owners because it's a franchise arrangement. So everybody set their own price, and so they are doing all of this. And Spark, the group, doesn't have real control. So we're getting a lot of complaints against Spar. We got a complaint against Discam. Many of these complaints relate to COVID-related items, if I may call them. So things like masks, gloves, sanitizers. We've also seen some complaints from consumers about certain food items, things like ginger, garlic have come up in a big way. And we have investigated many of these. We got over 900 cases Not all of these cases will be pursued or are necessarily relevant or have adequate evidence for us to pursue, but they give you a sense of consumer discontent, because obviously that number of complaints indicates a general unhappiness on the part of society with prices. So whether we say there are cases or not, the point is we've had complaints. So we've pursued others. We've prosecuted a firm already at the tribunal, competition tribunal. We are awaiting a judgment. The name of the firm is called Babelechi. It's a supplier also of protective equipment. So we prosecuted them for hiking the price of masks. They increased prices into the region of 500% and more, as well as their margins. We also are prosecuting now, as I have indicated, DISCAM. So DISCAM is due to file its papers today in answer to the Commission's case, and that case will be heard by the tribunal on the 4th. So we're hearing all of these cases on a fast-track basis. Again, our major complaint against DISCAM is that they've hiked prices far above the costs that they themselves had to pay. So we know that they faced some increases for things like masks, but the percentage, the level at which they increased prices was far higher than the level at which their suppliers had increased prices. So enabling them to earn margins higher than they normally would have earned had it not been for the COVID crisis. So those are the types of cases we have had. The second issue I wanted to talk about was that we also have granted various exemptions. So if you are a group of entrepreneurs, businesses, and you are impacted so much by the disaster that you want to coordinate your response to it, there is an opportunity that you may apply to the Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition, or the Competition Commission itself, and apply to be exempted from some of the provisions of the Competition Act. We have provided these exemptions to sectors like banking, sectors like the property shopping mall owners. We have provided this to the health sector. So the health sector is very, very important at this time because they need to be able to coordinate their response. They must compare notes, share information on their stock levels. You know, you don't want them to run out of stock for some of the critical things that we will need to treat people who are sick of the virus. So all of these have come to us, and mainly with the support of the industry associations or led by industry associations, sometimes even by the other regulators concerned. So for example, banks managed to approach National Treasury, and National Treasury came to us together with the banks and explained what the banks needed to do in an economy like this in order to respond. And we were able to grant them the exemption. So that's the flip side, is that you enforce competition, but you also allow higher levels of coordination than you would otherwise do. And in any event, this coordination, we think that is more in the interest of the consumer than just allowing unbridled competition that may in the end lead to a shortage of supplies of critical products or collapse of certain sectors. So it's collaboration for really our own survival. We, insofar as the supply of these COVID-related products, and that's the last thing I'm going to be talking about. We know that there is a lot of panic, if I may say, in the market about the supply of these. You know, the state is going to be buying a lot of these products. Part of the economic stimulus announced by the president will go towards buying. So I think 20 billion allocated to health is going to be buying a lot of this stock, which must be brought into the country. And we've seen that there was some centralization of the procurement process by National Treasury, where they appointed a single company that would, in a sense, coordinate all of this work. Anyway, there was an outcry about this, and Treasury has announced that it's going to reverse that decision, as I understand. That's something that we welcome. We ourselves were watching this. At some stage, we were going to intervene if we had a situation where one particular supplier was going to now be awarded the contract exclusively to appoint others or even arrange logistics for all others. So that's something we were watching, and we are glad that it's getting resolved without our intervention. I hope that there will be no need for our intervention whatsoever. But of course, if there are issues around procurement that impact on competition, people are free to complain to the Competition Commission, and we will see if there are any grounds in terms of the Competition Act to pursue those. Also, what I wanted to mention in this regard is this period it gives us an opportunity to actually promote new entrants into this area and strengthen the other smaller ones. So if there are suppliers who are manufacturers of some of these products, so things like masks, there's going to be a lot of domestic or local production. We want to encourage people to do that. And those who are exporting, also we would encourage them to do so for products that we might not be able to produce and will be sorely needed for fighting COVID-19. The small players who are importing or manufacturing, they have an opportunity also to do joint ventures, because the logistics of doing this are huge, and the big companies are getting all the benefits and scale advantages. And so if small players want to come in, want to bring in things like masks, want to pull together resources to do a factory for that, that's something that we would encourage. They could do joint ventures. They could come to the Competition Commission for exemptions in order to work together. Even if they are importing, they can still do the same. Instead of them shipping in small quantities, getting a container there and a container there, they can bring the entire vessel of product, and that's if they are able to pull together. So I do encourage collaboration amongst small players, because the only way small players can become competitive, in other words, they can bring about a much needed competition to the bigger players, is if we are able to give small players a leeway just to enable them to work together. Sometimes there are conditions. So we may say that you can ship the product together into South Africa, but when you come here, we expect that you will not be coordinating prices. Each one will be selling to their customers at a price they deem fit. So all of those are possible. And similarly, if you needed to export, I don't think there is much exports in this kind of market, But in case you needed to export, let's say a neighboring country needs masks, instead of you going one by one, you can, as small players, to promote exports. Let's say we were manufacturing masks and we have a surplus we want to sell to Zimbabwe. People can get together, and instead of each one sending a bucket to Zimbabwe, send a big truck to Zimbabwe and sell at a single price. We can give exemptions for those sorts of things, especially if it is small players that are involved. Sometimes even big players can justify, as I have indicated, even banks got exemptions under these conditions. So even large players can do this, but I am more interested in assisting small and especially small Black players, women-owned enterprises, to get together because there are efficiencies in pulling together rather than doing this thing one by one. I've been helping a lot of entrepreneurs with their goods who were stuck at our ports of entry because they didn't get import permits. But many of these were small individuals, opportunistic, of course, because there is now a need for these products. But they are not pulling together. They are not working together in order to meet the demand and importing at a large scale. And my worry is that actually even China and other producers are eventually going to run out of product. So as South Africa, it's in our interest that our entrepreneurs get together, and if we need to import anything, we import it in sufficiently large quantities. Lastly, I'm going to talk about the other products like alcohol. So alcohol has become a big problem now, the shortage of alcohol, which is used for sanitizers and so on. It's a product that is only produced by very, very few, supplied by the very, very few firms in South Africa. And it's a product that I think at some stage government is going to restrict its circulation, its availability, because it's needed by the healthcare profession. But the question I've been asking myself, why do we not have entrepreneurs that are able to import this product that is clearly in the shortage, and that shortage is pushing up prices and is likely to affect our ability to deliver the kind of service that is required during a crisis like this. So I really encourage entrepreneurs that instead of them seeing regulators under these circumstances as people who are wanting to slow them down, they should really see us as partners who want to make sure that the wheels of the economy continue grinding, that the economy empowers a lot more people, it's more inclusive, and that the value chains are much more open. They are open not only to the incumbents, but a lot of more new people are coming in to supply the much needed products and services. So I think that I probably exhausted my time, but you can tell me, Sichaba, if I can still go on. I have a lot of content, but I'm watching the time as well.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. I think maybe let's open it up for questions so that it's on point in terms of what people are asking, and I continue to encourage them to put them in the chat box. So maybe let me take it from there, and then you'll have an opportunity to wrap it up. Because I'm going to be reading in the screen, I apologize. I will not put my video back on for now. So let's take the first question. The importance, Uzama Chabalala says, the importance of economic transformation can't be understated. How can we use this disaster as an opportunity?
I'm aware that I didn't address it in my talk, not fully anyway. This is really a once in a lifetime opportunity, as Zama says, to really reset the agenda. And one of the things we need to do, this economy is highly concentrated. We need to massify entry of SMMEs in various sectors of the economy. So a lot of the funding, the stimulus, I'm hoping, is going to be directed to entrepreneurs on the ground. Anyway, they are the ones who do not have reserves. So a lot of big companies, some of them will collapse, but many of them do have the reserves to be able to survive this, and they will indeed survive. So if we have a steep slowdown, those who are likely to exit are SMMEs, and this is where we need to be really pushing the stimulus towards. And in a sense, actually, entry and SMMEs is giving us the biggest opportunity to transform the economy. You don't even have to say that you are targeting Black people. You know, by targeting SMMEs, a lot of them are going to be Black-owned. And in a way, by targeting SMMEs, you are going to the real entrepreneurs, because these are people who are already doing so much with very little help. So if anything, you know, that I would have wanted to hear from government in the stimulus is a specific quota for SMMEs, a specific quota for the informal market. Let me give you an example. I know that I don't have to spend all my time with this one question. How do we target the women who are selling vegetables? The women who are selling vegetables and fruit at the taxi rank and somewhere else in the city, the townships, they buy their produce at municipality-owned fresh produce markets. So we know where we can find them to support them. So the next time they go there, it would be so nice if we would have a project that will aim to pump some of the stimulus there. They could get credits from the market, they could get subsidies from the market, but in my view, they could also get a lot of support to make their businesses more efficient. So how nice would it be for them to be able to get technology that get them to replace their stock as the need arises? So when you buy a banana, they never say, I don't have it, because they are able to communicate with the market all the time, and the market has got buggies that deliver or trucks that deliver on as required, just like the large retailers do with their distribution centers, right? So you could really support them in so many ways, making sure that their stalls are up to standard. So maybe a stimulus for the informal sector is to make sure that at the stalls where they take their produce overnight, there's refrigerators. Maybe that is the stimulus they need for the future. So, and you can go sector by sector. You know, if you care to think deeply about what this stimulus can do, you can go to the taxi industry. You could have similar types of interventions. You can go to the farming. You know, not just people who are then trading fresh produce, but those who are actually working the land. And you can design this stimulus so that it can work from the ground up. My fear is that if it ends up with large corporates, it's not going to achieve the purpose.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Uzulu, I'm not sure if he wanted it to be known in full, so because he sent it privately, this question, I'll just say Uzulu is asking you to please investigate livestock auctions. There are a lot of instances of individuals that work together to push up prices of animals. This makes it very difficult for small scale and emerging farmers to afford buying animals for farming. Have you seen a spike now during this lockdown period, Commissioner, around the livestock auctions?
There have been very few auctions, as far as I know, for livestock during this time. But I should say that the problem Zulu is raising has been brought to our attention before, and we have looked into the matter. It's very hard for us to obtain evidence. We are still looking for evidence. We've done all sorts of things. I don't know. I mean, a lot of people will be aware that, for an example, we managed to uncover an agreement between Karan and INJ for the supply of beggars. We have managed to look at. We've looked at various beef suppliers. And we have found things there, but on the trading of livestock, we've had a lot of people being unhappy, but no evidence. So a lot of black farmers, I'll tell you, come to us and they say, when we go to the market, things change at the market. When our stock is to be traded, all of a sudden the market is going to yield lower prices. And when we go to buy, the market will yield higher prices. There is some manipulation, but really is the evidence that we have been missing, and maybe we need to dig some more.
This one talks about Udubandlela is talking about what role is the Commission playing in stopping Pick n Pay and Checkers from opening spaza shops in townships, which are already heavily contested by non-South Africans?
Thank you very much. I'm grateful for this question. The Commission has done a study, and those who are interested can go into our website. They will find a grocery retail market study that we have done. It's true that the large retailers are a problem going into the townships, but I'm going to talk about this in a moment. What I will say, though, is it's actually not the biggest problem. So we've done a survey of people who are running spaza shops, and we said, what is the problem? They did list that the entry of the large retailers into the townships is a problem. But that problem was number 2. It was not number 1. And the number 3 was the entry of foreign nationals. Guess what was the number 1 problem, according to the survey? It was crime, because spaza shops involve people handling cash. And if you do not have law enforcement in the townships, you can remove foreign nationals, you can remove the large retailers, you will still not have spaza shop thriving. You'll be solving a wrong problem. The primary problem that makes our people not to be able to trade in the townships is crime. These are cash businesses. And that's why, I was part of the things we're learning about the lockdown is also that there could be so many enforcement officers in the streets, and actually crime levels go down. I think we need to really impress upon the president and the leadership of this country that you are not able to have business when you have high levels of crime. That's number 1. So let me now come to the issue of entry of the large retailers in the townships. As I've indicated, it's definitely a problem. It might not be number 1, but maybe in future, actually, it may well be climb up the ranks as a number 1 problem. What we've done there, because you really cannot stop people from doing business models that they want. But what you want is to support these spaza shops that are there to be as efficient, if not better. And we've given some recommendations to government on what they can do. So things like supporting them with logistics, I've already spoken about distribution centers. This is really what is making them to be super efficient, but also making cheap finance available. You know, people who are doing spaza shops, they sell in the end, so you know that they will have revenue. There's no need why they must go to mashonisas for loans that they require for working capital. So the issue of working capital, very, very, very crucial for spaza shops. So you need a total package to support them, but also you can regulate the entry of these large retailers into townships. So one of the things I've said to the Gauteng government, for example, is why do you give the large retailers liquor licenses? Whenever you have a big retailer next to it, there is a liquor outlet. Why do you need that? They don't need that. They already are competitive. They don't need government help because you know, a license is help you get from government. They don't need that help. They don't. People in the township are not short of alcohol that you need a big retailer to establish there in order to provide them with alcohol. That doesn't make sense. So all of the areas where we are able to license, we can push them back. We can also push them back through things like zoning and so on, because municipalities regulate a lot of this, you know, but also government in certain instances have gone out of its way to support these big brands in venturing into the township by giving them land, giving them even buildings and so on. We've had to intervene in certain instances where the government itself is promoting this sort of thing. So I think that it can be stopped, but it can be stopped in a smart way by making sure that you enhance spaza shops to be able to compete better with them, but also you can restrict them on certain lines and certain locations.
Thank you, Commissioner. Millicent Shai is asking a question, and I'll also paraphrase it, about the fact that accommodation facilities as essential service providers, their sector has been removed on the CIPC Biz portal. And I guess if you can comment on that, and the reason why I said I will paraphrase it, I'm trying to figure out how competitive is it for a whole sector to be denied an opportunity to trade.
Well, if the entire sector is denied, there's clearly no competition issues because it's going to apply to everybody equally. I think that this sector, though, does have all sorts of competition problems. I will flag some of them. There is Airbnb, which is also a participant in the market, but not really fully regulated here. My worry is our attempts to regulate it may over-calibrate. In other words, you may simply prevent people who own BNBs from operating them through Airbnb completely, and that will still not help us. So I think that is probably a time that it is closed for us to think about what kind of sector we want to have post-COVID. But I'm afraid I don't have answers about what happens during COVID itself.
Okay, thank you very much. Uzipo had asked a very important question to say, what has been a penalty for the irregular price increases?
Thank you very much. The penalties for irregular prices vary. We ask for a 10% of turnover. We've had one contested case. We are waiting for the judgment, so we don't know. And as I've indicated, this case is currently before the tribunal as well, so we don't know. The only thing we know is those cases where we have settled, and I need to explain this. We have settled with a lot of small players. In fact, some of them, you will really find them into extinction, you know, if you were to levy heavy penalties. We've looked at their turnover. Remember, we have to look at you must have a turnover of at least 5 million before the Commission is able to intervene on excessive pricing. So a lot of them barely make it. You know, someone with a 5 million turnover, that's very, very small. And it's them, you know, people who own individual pharmacies and so on. So it's been very difficult to administer a proper kind of punishment for such, which without destroying them and destroying the jobs that they create. So in some instances, we've asked them to donate to the Solidarity Fund, sometimes to charities. In some instances, we've asked them to repay the consumers themselves. But I admit that this is a very difficult area on how to punish, especially smaller players.
I guess this next question, Commissioner, could be smaller, but could be big, depending on how you want to look at it. Osia Bulela is saying, what role does the Commission play in ensuring that minibus taxi operators are not overcharging commuters during this time, especially in the context where the industry is not subsidized and only receive capital subsidy in the form of TRP?
Well, there are too many questions loaded within one question there. So we've done a study into public transport, and it was no surprise that our study confirmed that the subsidy system operates in an inequitable manner as regards taxi operators. They are not getting subsidies, and I think that that places them into an even bigger disadvantage during a time like this, where you have all sorts of restrictions, including on the number of passengers. I think that the taxi people would be entitled to say that they will increase prices because they are not allowed to load their taxis into full capacity. But this is where part of the stimulus should be going. You know, when I was talking about supporting various industries, this is one way to support the taxi industry. We can take average. How many trips do you take a day? If you are saying that, we are saying that 25% of your seats must not be filled, how much would those seats have given you? And then try to kind of compensate them for something like this in exchange for them not increasing prices for consumers. So this is just but one way, one example in which you can deal with it, and that would be the start of a subsidy scheme for taxis, which is needed anyway because the current subsidy scheme is inequitable. Thank you.
We're running out of time. In fact, I might as well say we have run out of time, Commissioner. There are many questions that in a conversation like this, one could not reach to. But as you reflect on the big challenges ahead, should the, let's call it the lockdowns continue for a while in different levels, what are some of the big lookouts for that you like businesses to bring to your attention, or individuals, just to make sure that you can assist the country, the economy during this difficult time? And then as we wrap up, also I'd like to thank you for taking the time to engage. The more we get a conversation like this going, the more we are better in a position as business people, as general people, to know that there are people looking after our interests beyond just interests of profit and business. So I'd like you to just share some thoughts and then sign out.
The first thing, thank you, Shabade. I mean, the first thing is that when people notice price, so business people who buy from suppliers and notice that prices have increased, and those increases are huge and unusually high, they must please contact us, because we collect that information so that when consumers complain, we have an idea where the source of the price increases may be coming from, because it's not the case that it's always coming from the retailer itself. So we ask the retailers and pharmacies to please provide us with that information. And sometimes we can engage the suppliers, and sometimes we may even investigate the suppliers. But also, consumers, when they notice that prices are high at retail, unusually high, they will not be able to know whether this is because the costs have gone up for the retailer or not. So they must continue bringing those to our attention. Not all of them will lead into cases, but at least we will be able to extract explanations from retailers. And where explanations are not satisfactory, in that case, we can pursue the matter by way of prosecutions. What I could say as I sign out is that this is really a time for patriotism. This is a time for solidarity. I am hoping that there will be no need. The government has made masks compulsory as of 1st of May. Anybody going in public must wear masks. So masks, a lot of people saw them as an area where they could make huge profits. I think that it's time to rethink. And I think that at this time, we should call upon, especially large enterprises, that they should try and make these products available, because they are really literally about saving lives. So please, if you are a large retailer, can you not make profit in all your other line items and just limit? So we've said, Chava, that all of those that we have found guilty and settled with us, and we've asked that they should limit their gross margins to 20% for things like masks and things like that. And I think if everybody can commit to that, just don't earn more than 20% margin on a mask, because it has now become a requirement for life, because by not wearing masks, we are likely to infect more and more people and get into a crisis in the country. So it's a matter of solidarity. There's no amount of enforcement that can help us achieve this. We will try and enforce against a few certain examples, but it is patriotism that I think is required at this stage. So thank you very much to you for hosting this Empower itself, Empower Works, right? For hosting this. I'm really honored to have shared time with your network this evening.
Just before I sign out, where do people register those complaints when they do see price hikes? Is it available on your website?
Yes, I think the best way is to go to the Competition Commission website. They will also find a contact number there. Other people have actually also used our social media. We monitor our social media regularly. So people have posted prices there and we were able to follow up.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Tembinkosi Bonakele, the Commissioner at the South African Competition Commission, for indulging us and really engaging us on the work that you do, and from entrepreneur as well as Empower Works. We really like to thank you for the time that we have taken. I would like to thank everybody that joined us directly via Zoom, as well as on all our social media handles, for being able to be part of this conversation. As I said, the more information we have, the more we are able to work together and be patriotic as we go through. I'm just going to mute everybody else just to sign you out, Commissioner, and say thank you very much. And on behalf of #Empower Entrepreneur, it's Sichar Motsielwa signing out.